Welcome everybody. I'm Irene Pasternack, teaching Feldenkrais with Northwest Parkinson's, and I am glad you're here this morning or afternoon, depending on what part of the country you are living in. Today the focus is going to be on knees, and knees are really quite an interesting joint. They are the biggest joint in our body, and in many ways they are the simplest joint in the body, because there aren't a lot of degrees of freedom in a knee. A knee is meant to fold and unfold, and then it has structures that stabilize it so that it can't move in other directions. And I thought that the best way to start working with a knee is to watch a short video which describes the knee. And when you have the visual, then we'll start playing with it after that. So I'm going to share my screen, and I just realized I forgot to do the one of sound now. Okay. There we go. Let me make it full screen.
The knee is the joint where the femur and the tibia meet. The patella, or kneecap, as it's commonly called,
stop this
is
for a
made
sec. Are you guys hearing the video?
Yes, we can hear it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start it playing again.
Bone and sits in front of the knee. The knee joint is a synovial joint. Synovial joints are enclosed by a ligament capsule and contain a fluid called synovial fluid that lubricates the joint. The end of the femur joins the top of the tibia to create the knee joint. Two round knobs called femoral condyles are found on the end of the femur. These condyles rest on the top surface of the tibia. This surface is called the tibial plateau. The outside half, the farthest away from the other knee, is called the lateral tibial plateau. And the inside half, closest to the other knee, is called the medial tibial plateau. The patella glides through a special groove formed by the two femoral condyles called the patellofemoral groove. The smaller bone of the lower leg, the fibula, never really enters the knee joint. It does have a small joint that connects it to the side of the tibia. This joint normally moves very little. Articular cartilage is the material that covers the ends of the bones of any joint. This material is about 1/4 of an inch thick in most large joints. It is white and shiny with a rubbery consistency. Articular cartilage is a slippery substance that allows the surfaces to slide against one another without damage to either surface. The function of articular cartilage is to absorb shock and provide an extremely smooth surface to facilitate motion. We have articular cartilage essentially everywhere that two bony surfaces move against one another or articulate. In the knee, articular cartilage covers the ends of the femur, the top of the tibia, and the back of the patella. Ligaments are tough bands of tissue that connect the ends of bones together. Two important ligaments are found on either side of the knee joint. They are the medial collateral ligament, or MCL, and the lateral collateral ligament, or LCL. Inside the knee joint, two other important ligaments stretch between the femur and the tibia. The anterior cruciate ligament, or ACL, in front, and the posterior cruciate ligament, or PCL, in the back. The MCL and the LCL prevent the knee from moving too far in the side-to-side direction. The ACL and the PCL control the front-to-back motion of the knee joint. The ACL keeps the tibia from sliding too far forward in relation to the femur. The PCL keeps the tibia from sliding too far backward in relation to the femur. Working together, the two cruciate ligaments control the back and forth motion of the knee. The ligaments, all taken together, are the most important structures controlling the stability of the knee. Two special types of ligaments, called menisci, sit between the femur and the tibia. These structures are sometimes referred to as the cartilages of the knee. But the menisci differ from the articular cartilage that covers the surface of the joint. The two menisci of the knee are important for two reasons. One, they work like a gasket to spread the force from the weight of the body over a larger area. And two, they help the ligaments with stability of the knee. Imagine the knee as a ball resting on a flat plate. The ball is the condyles of the femur, and the plate is the tibial plateau. The menisci actually wrap around the round condyles to fill the space between it and the flat tibial plateau. The menisci act like a gasket, helping to distribute the weight from the femur to the tibia. Without the menisci, any weight on the femur will be concentrated to one point on the tibia. But with the menisci, weight is spread out across the tibial surface. Weight distribution by the menisci is important because it protects the articular cartilage on the ends of the bones from excessive forces. Without the menisci, the concentration of force into a small area on the articular cartilage can damage the surface, leading to degeneration over time. In addition to protecting the articular cartilage, the menisci help the ligaments with stability of the knee. The menisci make the knee joint more stable by acting like a wedge set against the bottom of a car tire. The menisci are thicker around the outside, and this thickness helps keep the round femur from rolling on the flat tibia. The menisci convert the tibial surface into a shallow socket. The socket is more stable and more efficient at transmitting the weight from the upper body than a round ball on a flat plate. The menisci enhance the stability of the knee and protect the articular cartilage from excessive concentration of force. Taken all together, the ligaments of the knee are the most important structures that stabilize the joint. Remember, ligaments connect bones to bones. Without strong, tight ligaments to connect the femur to the tibia, the knee joint would be too loose. Unlike other joints in the body, the knee joint lacks a stable bony configuration. The hip joint, for example, is a ball that sits inside a deep socket. The ankle joint has a shape similar to a mortise and tenon, a way of joining wood used by craftsmen for centuries. Tendons are similar to ligaments, except that tendons attach muscles to bones. The quadriceps tendon connects the large quadriceps muscle of the thigh to the patella. This tendon continues across the patella, or kneecap, and blends into the patellar tendon. The patellar tendon connects the patella to the tibia. The hamstring muscles on the back of the thigh also have tendons that attach in different places around the knee joint. These tendons are sometimes used as tendon grafts to replace torn ligaments in the knee joint. The extensor mechanism is the motor that drives the knee joint and allows us to walk. It sits in front of the knee joint and is made up of the patella, the patellar tendon, the quadriceps tendon, and the quadriceps muscles. The four quadriceps muscles in front of the thigh are the muscles that attach to the quadriceps tendon. When these muscles contract, they straighten the knee joint, such as when you get up from a squatting position. The way in which the kneecap fits into the patellofemoral groove on the front of the femur and slides as the knee bends can affect the overall function of the knee. The patella works like a fulcrum, increasing the force exerted by the quadriceps muscles as the knee straightens. The hamstring muscles are the large muscles in the back of the thigh. When these muscles contract, the knee bends. The most important.
Alrighty. Now I've got to figure out how to stop the share.
Just go to the view options on the top, put next to the green line, yeah, and it should let you stop it from there.
I'm not seeing that green line on my screen, the usual thing that I see.
Nerves around the knee are the tibial nerve
Whoops.
and the common
There it
peroneal
is.
nerve in the back.
I had the
These
video
nerves travel
at full
to the
screen.
lower leg and foot.
And now I've got to stop the volume. There we go. Now I'm ready. So it's a little bit of a long video, but I think a nice simple one for seeing the parts of the knee. So let's take a moment and do our pre-scan before we start doing explorations. So just as you're sitting there, notice where your feet are in relationship to your knees. And if we could see each other's feet, we would see that there are many ways people choose. Sometimes their knees are inside their feet. Sometimes their knees are wider than their feet. Sometimes their knees, their feet are tucked under them. Short people tend to bend our legs further back and put our feet on our toes. But just notice what you chose as your default for where you put them. And then stand up.
What about,
Oh, go ahead.
what about those of us that have knee replacement?
So knee replacements function the same way that knees do. I mean, that biologic knees do. They have the same shapes to them, same issues. And one of the interesting challenges is that people who have knee replacements may not have learned how to move in a way that would have kept their original knee healthy. And you can wear out your knee replacements the same way that you can wear out your knees by not putting the forces through those condyles in the way that they're designed to. So even with bionic knees, this is useful learning. Yeah. Okay, so come up to standing. And just stand comfortably. And notice where the weight is on your feet. Do you have more weight in your heels, more weight in the front of your feet? And then imagine in your body where your hip joint is. We saw in the video a little picture of where that ball and socket is. So not where the hips, where your pants sit, not the top of your pelvis, but the actual place where your femur goes into your pelvis. And if you drop a plumb bob, drop a weight down from it on a string, does it land behind your feet, in front of your feet, in the middle of your feet? See if you can get a sense. We all have a default standing position, and many of us stand kind of far back where your knees feel like they're a little in front of you as you're standing, or they may feel like they're a little behind you, or they may feel directly, you can feel a line between your hip joint, your knees, and your feet, just to sense where you are now. And then go for a walk and wait for a sec before you go. When you're walking, notice, do you have a sensation that you're pulling yourself from your front foot or you're pushing yourself from your back foot? What sensation do you have? And if you have stairs in the place that you live, go walk up and down a couple stairs just to feel what it feels like this morning. Notice where you're efforting, where is it hard? Oh, good, Keith. I like your stairs because they're at a place that we can see. I might use you as a demo later. Is it easier to go up? Which foot do you go up the stairs with? Which foot do you go down the stairs with? What happens if you switch and try and go up with the other foot or down with the other foot? All right, and then come back to your chair. So the first thing we're going to do is find some of these places on our knees that we looked at in the video. So come and sit toward the front of your chair. And let's start with the right knee. See if you can find your kneecap, your patella, the little ball kind of in the front there, okay? And then slide your fingers down from there on the front of the knee and find the ledge of the tibial plateau. And if you bend and unbend your knee a few times, you'll be able to feel, and let me get my knee handy. So you're looking for this ledge right here, and it's easier to feel it on the two sides than in the middle, because the middle has the big tendon over it. And so this guy has his leg bent, and you can see that this ledge of the knee is a good 2 inches down from the skin surface on the top. Sometimes our mental map of our knee is that the hinge is right up at the surface, but it's down a couple inches. That's where the joint is. Okay. And like we saw in the video, there's the outside of the plateau and there's the inside of the plateau. And that's where the two cups are that the top of the knee rotates in. And with your finger right on, both hands right on that tibial plateau, slide your foot a little forward and backward. That's the place that you straighten. Okay. And then let's find the fibula, which is that little bone that goes down to your ankle on the outside. And I find the easiest way to find this is to put my thumb on the top of my knee and then reach down with my forefinger. And my forefinger down the side will feel that bony lump where the fibula comes in. The one thing I disagreed with the person who did the video we watched is he says the fibular joint doesn't move much. But if you put your hand down here, you can put two fingers right around the bulb, the malleolus of the fibula. And if you lift the inside edge of your foot or the outside edge of your foot, you can feel your fibula move. Or if you take your foot like a windshield wiper, you can feel that joint move. Yeah, okay. So let's do a little exploration of how we put forces through there. So first, as you're thinking about it, what is above your knee that you might be able to move in order to put the force into your knee in a different way? Let's stand up for a moment. And experiment with shifting your pelvis a little bit left and right, and see if you can sense in your right knee when you're putting your weight in the inside condyle, the inside cup, and when you're putting your weight in the outside cup. And then see if, try and find that spot when you're not putting more weight on the outside or the inside, but you're putting the weight straight through it. If you're sitting down as you're doing this exploration, you can push down into your foot a little bit, and you can still, by shifting your weight in your chair, put the weight into one condyle or the other. Now, ideally, in a knee that has all its healthy cartilage in it, you want the weight to be evenly distributed between the two condyles. Sometimes, though, we have damage on one side, the meniscus is missing, or you've torn some cartilage or just worn it out. And then you have to find a way to put the force through a different part of the knee that doesn't hurt as much. Okay, good. Now, how could you move the weight to the front part of the knee or the back part of the knee? What could you do with your pelvis to find those two places? I'm going to stand up so I can feel what I'm talking about. Yeah. Try tucking your pelvis like you wanted to tuck your tail between your knees. And then try arching your back a little, so untucking your pelvis. The tuck and the untuck. And feel how the weight shifts in your right knee. So you can put a little more weight on the right side as you're trying to feel this. But the tuck of the pelvis and the untuck makes a big difference on where the weight goes through. This is something that's really important when walking uphill or downhill or going up and down stairs, is knowing that this is something you can experiment with to see what feels better. Okay. Now we'll just go for a little walk and see if anything feels different in this knee just from having thought about it for a moment. And see when you're walking, do you feel like the weight goes through both sides of the knee evenly? And let's do a walking experiment. Walk where you're landing on your big toe side of your feet. So a very kind of pigeon-toed rolling in walk. And feel which side of your right knee does that go into. And then walk, keeping your weight under the fourth, under the base of the fourth toe. And then walk like you were bow-legged, so the weight goes into your pinky toes. And feel where the weight goes through your knee then. And then just go for a regular walk. And notice, is your habit a little bit more big toe, a little bit more pinky toe, somewhere in the middle? And then come and just stand up in front of your computer. And as you're standing there, do you feel more secure on your right foot or your left foot? Is there a little difference in how tall you feel on one side or the other? Okay, come and sit down. And begin to experiment now with your right foot, with where your foot is. Roll your foot, like you go tuck your foot under and feel in your knee what happens. Or roll your foot the other way. Or tuck it under the chair. Or put it way out in front of you. Just try and find 10 different places you can put your foot and think about what that's doing to those two cups and the condyles from the top sitting in them. Okay. And then close your eyes as you're sitting there and sense any differences you feel left side and right side. Now, there's one other thing that makes a huge difference in going downhill with the knees, and that is the ability to move the pelvis. And I'm going to just share a picture for a moment. So this is a picture of the back of your body. Up here, there are your ribs. The bottom ribs, and we've talked about the floating ribs a little bit. This picture shows the floating ribs. And I know when I look at this picture, the first thing that I'm struck with is, oh wow, the ribs really do hang down. They're not straight across. And then here is the top of your pelvis, where when you put your hands on your hips, that's where your hands go. And there's a muscle that goes from, sorry about that, from the lowest rib to the top of the pelvis. It's this kind of little muscle, the fibers are shown in green, that's the direction that it goes. And we're gonna play with trying to find that muscle. That's the muscle you use when you hike your hips. So in your chair there, lift your left hip a little bit. Just like try and lighten it on the chair. And it's most likely going to be that muscle on your back, the quadratus lumborum, that shortens. If you put your hand on your back with your fingertips on the crest of your pelvis and your thumb toward the floating ribs, and you try to shorten that distance, it will lift your hip off the chair. And it just kind of lifts you almost straight up. But feel how your weight goes a little bit into your other side when you do that. So if you have the challenges, the challenge of that you find your weight is mostly going into the inner condyle of your knee, see how when you lift this up and you lift this hip up a little bit, it takes the weight a little bit more into the, evenly into the knee. And when you're going downhill, if you hike your hip a little, that other foot will be able to reach the ground a little more. Because that, lifting that one, let's try it in standing. So go ahead and stand up. And shorten that muscle on your left side, which is gonna mean that you have to roll up onto your toes a little bit. Because when the hip lifts, the whole leg is gonna lift a little bit. And that's a way to stand on your right foot. So try as you're standing there to, and you can hold on to something with your hand if you want to, but to come up on the toes of your left foot so that the weight shifts into your right leg. And then if you have some stairs there, go up or try this on the downhill, on going down the stair, about thinking about lowering your hip so that your foot can reach the floor, but the stair underneath. Yeah, that there's a tilt of the hip that helps you get down to that lower stair. And if instead you try walking down the stairs without letting your hips tilt, see what it's like to try to walk down the stairs without letting your hips tilt. And the hips tilting, and then come on back to your chair. The hips tilting are one of the ways that you reduce the amount of force when you're going down a stair. Because if you don't tip your hips like that, then it goes whump when you land. And the other leg has to work harder to hold you back from getting down there. Okay, so come sit down again. Let's do a little exploration of our left knee. So find the tibial plateau of your left knee. And on this knee, put your thumbs behind your knee while your forefingers are on the tibial plateau, on that ledge. So with your knee bent, you'd have your forefingers on the plateau and your knees just behind, just so you can feel how thick that joint is front to back. Just helps you visualize if your weight is too far in the front of the knee or the back of the knee. Okay, and find your fibula on this left side. And again, you put your thumb on the top, your two fingers down, and they can feel the bone of the fibula. And if you windshield wiper your foot or lift one edge of your foot or the other edge, you'll feel that fibula move. And then with your left hand touching your fibula, put your right hand on your tibia and windshield wiper your foot. And feel how your tibia rotates a little bit too. And for the tibia to rotate, what's happening in your thigh and maybe your hip joint? Is there a little bit of motion when you rotate your tibia, fibula, your windshield wiping your foot, that you feel that ball and socket move a little in and out, like it moves closer to your midline and away from you while you windshield wiper your foot? So the knee can only be happy when the hip's happy and the foot and the ankle are happy, because they all have to work as a team in order to keep the forces going just the way they want to go in the knee. Okay. Now come up to standing. And experiment. Well, first notice on this side, is your hip joint right over the center of your knee, or is it over more toward the front or the back? And experiment with moving your pelvis. How can you move your pelvis to be in different positions relative to your knee? And the pelvis moves in all sorts of wonderful directions. You can hike one hip up and feel how that changes how the weight goes into your left knee. You can twist your pelvis. Feel how that goes into the knee. You can tip your pelvis, so like tucking your tail between your legs, pulling your belly in, or pushing your belly out, waving your tail behind you. And when walking on hills, this is definitely something to experiment with to see which feels the best. Okay. Or you could just shift your weight from side to side. So it's like taking your whole pelvis and putting it over here or putting it over there. And then find the place where you can put your pelvis where it feels like the weight just goes beautifully down both sides into the two cups on the lower leg, that it just sits nicely in there. All right, and go for a little walk, paying attention mostly to the left side, and do the experiment walking on this side. Sometimes walking where you put the weight in your big toe or your little toe, and feel what that does to your knee. Find the place in between the big toe and the little toe where it feels like when you're walking on the left foot that you're really coming through evenly on the two sides. And then go find your stairs and do a little experimenting with what happens in this left knee when you go up and down stairs. And in particular, when you're going up the stair, do you feel like you're pulling yourself up with the front knee, the knee that goes up first? Or do you feel like you're pushing yourself up from your back knee? And then come have a seat. So raise your hand if you felt like you were pulling yourself up from your front leg. Okay, a couple of you. And raise your hand if you felt like you were pushing yourself up. Okay, and raise your hand if you're not quite sure what you were doing, which is fine too. Okay. So usually the pushing yourself up way is going to work better than the pulling yourself up way. And I want to play with that a little bit in standing. So come up to standing. And go for a walk where you put a foot down in front of you and then you pull yourself to that foot. Just to feel what it's like to, it's kind of like a trucker's walk where the foot extends out and then you pull your body toward it. This is the ministry of funny walks where we're just trying strange things here. Okay. So your leg will spend a lot more time in front of you than behind you when you do that. And then walk in a way where your legs spend more time behind you than in front of you. And see if you can find a way, if you leave your heel down a little bit longer when it's behind you, that you can push off with that heel. And then come and find a place where you can put a hand on a wall or your chair, something for some support. And everybody put your right foot behind your left foot. So it sort of as if you were stepping from your right foot onto your left. Okay. And to transfer your weight, try rolling up your back foot. So you roll to the ball of your foot and feel how that puts you on the front foot. And we've played with this with other lessons. If you turn your belly a little bit toward the foot you're landing on, that little turn helps. Just feel how that, the combination of pushing up and turning your belly and getting tall on that side, you could raise that arm up in the air that you're stepping onto, how that makes the weight feel in your left knee. How there's a way that it just gets you right over that left knee so you're solid. So make sure you're turning your belly a little bit. I see some of you going up and back really quickly. Try going slower and staying up for a moment and trying to fine tune by where you put your belly. What feels different in the knee that's receiving the weight? So if your arm's up in the air, when you turn, it's like let's put a hand on your sternum. You can put your thumb on your sternum. And so when you're turning, your sternum, if you look down, can be right over your leg that you're standing on by rolling up the back foot. There you go. Yeah. Okay, rest for a moment. And now try doing that, but don't do the turn at all, and sense how the weight goes through the knee that's receiving the weight. Feel how it just doesn't feel as nice and solid in that knee. And then go back to turning your sternum, turning your belly so that they're over the leg that the weight is coming to. And feel how that lets the weight go out into your fourth toe. And you might even be able to sense your fibula moving backwards. Okay, good. Let's try that on the other side. So now your right foot's forward, the left foot's back. So go do it slowly, go up slowly, and feel how that little turn of your sternum and belly over that leg make the weight go into your left knee now. So you really want to turn the sternum so that when you look down, it's over your knee. All right, come back and sit down for a moment. And we're going to use those muscles on our back between the floating ribs and the top of your pelvis, the quadratus lumborum, and lift one hip up off your chair. And then turn your sternum so that your sternum is over that leg. Okay. And come back down. And now lift the hip without turning the sternum and feel where there's pressure in your knee. And then turn your sternum. And you might feel this more in your foot, that when you do that little turn, that's when your foot just feels relaxed and flat. If you're still looking straight ahead, there's a little tension that goes down the inside of the leg down into the foot. But if you lift the hip, turn the sternum, you're right over yourself. Okay. Let's try it on the other side. Lift your other hip. And just play with that a few times to find, how do you do that? How do you shorten that little muscle between your hip and your pelvis and the back? Your weight transfers a little onto the other side. And then once you get over there, turn your sternum a little. And then there's that little bit more solidness over that leg. The wonderful thing is that when you do things that are good for your knees, they're good for your balance. They're good for your walking. But just even being aware of the knees, usually the only time we're aware of our knees is when they hurt. But aware of when there's this lovely sensation of, my foot's relaxed, my knee's relaxed, the pressure is even there. Okay. So get up and go for a little walk around. Sense how your knees are feeling in the walking. And come back and stay standing at your computer or near a wall where you could hold on to something. And lift both heels and come down. And do that faster and lighter. And feel where your head is in space while you're doing that lifting the heels. If you're sitting in a chair, squeeze your buttocks together, which lifts you a little bit, and does the same thing, which it brings your head a little bit forward, and come down so your heels are touching, just lightly touching. But you haven't gone back, you haven't brought your head and shoulders back. And notice where your hip joint is in relationship to your knees and your feet, and how the weight in your feet is more distributed between your heel and the front of your foot. And then bring your shoulders back so the weight goes right into your heels. And then visualize the line between your hips and your knees and your feet. And then tilt a little forward so you could lift your heels again. And feel that line going through the knees. And go for a walk, trying to keep that tiny little bit of being a little bit more forward than you're used to. And see how that feels in your ability to find that place where you push off from the foot behind you. All right, and then come and have a seat. And see if in sitting now, where did you put your feet in relationship to your knees? Are they a little bit more under your knees before? Our habits with this stuff are so strong. You know, if you're a woman and you grew up in the South, you grew up keeping your knees tight and your feet way apart. It's like that was the habit of how women sat. And just that checking in with yourself, because if you're experiencing knee problems, anything that you do that gets the knees so that they're at a funny angle to each other wears out the cartilage, and will lead to pain if you do it on a long-term basis. So any comments or thoughts after this? Any ahas? Oh, that's what I'm doing that bugs my knees. Or looks like Noelle's about to unmute herself.
Yeah, you had the last part you told us, I didn't quite understand.
Rich, can you move a little closer to your computer, or Noelle, move the computer a little closer? That way we can hear you better.
Yeah, I was misunderstanding that last step where you're getting the knee in the wrong place for longevity.
So if the forces are going through your knee at a funny angle, that's going to wear out a little spot in the cartilage. And when you wear out the cartilage and you get to what they call bone on bone or whatever, that hurts. So the lining yourself up over your knees is the way to keep the same amount of weight on the inside and outside sides of the bone. If I take off the kneecap here, you can really see how your femur has these two parts, and they need to have the weight going in evenly.
Okay.
But in order to do that, we have to be able to sense it. And that's what today was about, trying to sense more. Yeah, it says Margaret, but you don't look like Margaret. So unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question to ask you. My name is Joe.
Joe, okay.
When I walk with my right foot, it sort of goes a little bit like this, but my left foot is perfectly, flat. But every time I do my right foot, it goes sort of a little flutter.
It has like a little flutter. And is the right side the side that's more affected by Parkinson's?
No, it's my left side that's more affected.
Oh, interesting. Let me just play for a sec with myself of what. Often those little flutters are the body's looking for support. And I'm wondering if that's happening because your left side doesn't fully transfer you over to the right side. So the thing that if I was working, that to work on is to think about lifting that thing we did in the chair where you lift your left hip up and turn your torso to the right. See if when you do that in sitting, if there's a way that you can feel that right foot really grounding into the floor. My guess is if you don't get quite over there, then the foot kind of is pulling around looking for that support. I
see. Okay, because I don't have problem walking, but it's just something I just happened to notice when I was walking with my bare feet, how it does it.
Uh-huh. Play with walking in slow motion and deliberately playing with the transfer of your left foot up over to your right foot, and see if that makes a difference with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bud.
Yeah, the distinctions before and after are not great with me, so I don't know if I'm just not cognizant of the changes, or.
Are you saying today or in lots of classes?
Today.
Today was a little bit more about just feeling where is this part of us and how can we move things. So I would expect it wouldn't have as much of a sort of radical shift in sensation as some of the lessons. So yeah, don't worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Today was more about let's change the map so that the map is clear, and then we'll continue playing with this in other lessons.
Good.
Mhm. Anybody have any insights into, oh, that's what made my knee hurt and why I needed a new knee, or that's what's making my knee hurt? Those of you who are non-video and are
Walking downhill for a couple of miles makes your knees hurt.
so for walking downhill, the secret is the hips and being able to lower one hip so that the foot reaches the ground easier so the knees don't take that pounding. So before you have to walk downhill, you can kind of play with the hiking one hip up, one hip down a little bit,
Yeah,
and see if that helps.
probably for a while.
Bill.
I noticed that when I'm going up or down the stairs, I lead with different feet. You know, coming up the stairs, I probably lead with my left foot. Coming down the stairs, I lead with my right foot. I never noticed that before.
The when you've injured a foot or a knee, they always say up with the good and down with the bad. And since all of us have a favorite foot, sort of a good foot and a bad foot, the foot we trust more that we're stabler on, our pattern of going up and down stairs usually follows that naturally. We go up with the good foot and down with the bad foot.
Would that be the same thing that he pushes with one foot and he pulls with the other foot when he's going up?
Yeah.
So he doesn't push with both. He pushes and pulls.
Yes, when you're going up, the back foot pushes you up, and you usually have one foot that feels sturdier for pushing up.
Mm-hmm.
And you usually have, when you're going down, you have to hold back with a foot, and so you leave that one, the stronger one, up as you come down with the foot that's not as reliable.
So if he was trying to build up strength, is the goal to try to have both when he's going up to be pushing up with both? Because when he pulls is when he yanks himself a bit.
Yeah, pulling yourself up the stairs is hard on the quads and hard on the knee. It's much better to push. So to practice going up the stairs with the other foot trying to push up. Mm-hmm. On the stairs, it's so dramatic that it's easier to learn there. Mm-hmm. But it applies in walking, because in walking you have to be pushing with both feet from the back, right, to make it even. But if you want to practice on stairs and you can build yourself a smaller stair, like even a book, and stepping up on the book and off the book, when you take the demand down, your learning can go up because your sensitivity goes up. So I would practice stepping up onto a book the opposite way that you usually do.
Got it. Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty. Any requests for next time?
Ankles.
Ankles. Okay. Good.
And top of ankles and top of feet.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Because that way I can incorporate some knee stuff in it as well, so that it connects. We were more talking about what's happening up above today than what's happening down below, but that matters for the feet, yeah, and for the knees. Alrighty. Anything else?
Posture.
Posture.
An S curve with a tilt to the, I think it's to the right, left, but my head gets tilted. I have to stand before a mirror and adjust myself to try to be more straight and aligned.
So the lesson we did on Tuesday, that ability to sense when am I curved and when am I uncurved, sort of the not tilted left, not tilted right. We'll be working on posture in all the lessons. I mean, today's lesson was all about getting up over our knees, which is posture. But you might want to go back and listen to that Tuesday one again and play with it, because it's the one, I mean, we have to be able to sense when we've started to tilt so that we can untilt.
Yeah. Currently, I know that I'm tilted until I look in the mirror.
So it's helpful to look in a mirror, but you don't have a mirror with you all the time. Most of the day, we don't have that mirror. We don't have that little zoom box. And so being able to sense, like when you're tilted, your weight is probably more on one sit bone than the other. Like just as you're sitting there. And if you notice the weight's more on one sit bone, that's when you get to do the little adjustment and play of how do I bring the weight onto the other sit bone. It's like you need your canaries that tell you when you're off kilter, so that you can do something about it. And then the things that we've been learning in here, the how to bend your ribs, how to curve one way or the other way, those are all the things you can play with. They're like a language of movement that lets you experiment. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I can talk more as we go in classes, sort of specifically applying posture. Yeah. Alrighty. I think that's a good place to leave things for today. So I'm going to stop the recording.